We're going to dive right in so we have as much time as possible with our special guests, and you guys can ask them questions, etc. I'm going to post over here on the right side. This is just our standard little intro so everybody knows who everybody is. I put everybody's Insta handles on there should you want access to that. But I'm going to dive right in and start introducing everybody. Who we have, I keep pointing to squares, but everybody's just wherever. Here in my center square, I have Shannon Mustafar, and she's here. She's, zooming in from Brooklyn, where she was the beverage director at Gladys Caribbean in Brooklyn, and also the founder of Women Who Tiki. And something we will bring up a couple of times today, she is the author of Tiki, Modern Tropical Cocktails. Fantastic book, and her background actually somewhat matches her book, which is pretty cool.
Hey guys, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's our absolute pleasure. And then over here in that corner, weighing in at 147 is Brandon Cummins. Nice. Okay, now you can stop. Brandon Cummins is zooming in from Kansas City, and he is the VP of Education and Marketing at Altamar Brands. And you will know Altamar from Probitas, which is one of the recommended rums this particular month. Oh, you already got a thumbs up. That's nice.
That was like double thumb.
And he's going to be talking about not only backing up Shannon in terms of what she wants to talk to you about in terms of the categorizations, but also specifically about Foursquare and how different distilleries and provenance of different countries really makes such a huge difference. So we're going to be playing back and forth. If you guys have any questions during either Shannon or Brandon's little spiels, please feel free to put them into the chat, and we'll try to get to everyone, and we'll have some Q&A as well. But I want to dive right in and start off with Shannon. And the question that we get from so many of our Shaker and Spoon fam and our subscribers is, why are there so many crazy categories and subcategorizations of rum? And why is it so difficult for people to try and find something that, fits exactly what maybe a bartender is looking for when they're trying to, taste something new or try something new? There's just so many, and we should start from 0 and go to 60.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's our...
That there's no way to really pin it down is what makes it an exciting category for me and for other people that are big appreciators of it. And I hope after this talk, you'll feel inspired to do some exploration of your own. But to answer the question more directly, the reason why there are so many types of rum and we don't really have a common language to describe it is that there's only one criterion that a liquid needs to fulfill in order to be called a rum. It has to be made from sugar. So that could be molasses, which is most common base for rums. Molasses is the byproduct of sugar production. So after you boil away the sugar crystals from fresh juice, you have molasses left over, you can ferment that and make a spirit. That's about 80 to 85% of the rums that you'll see on the shelf. You can also make rum from fresh pressed juice. In that case, it's a little more specific to certain geographies. More often than not, we're talking about former French colonies. So Martinique is the easiest to find example of this type of rum, and they even have laws on that island that define everything from what type of sugarcane species to the type of yeast, the method of fermentation, distillation, aging, and so forth, that takes a lot of cues from cognac. That's called rum agricole. Some people call rums from Guadeloupe or from Marie Galante agricole as well, but technically they don't qualify because they don't have the laws that Martinique has. But that's when we're starting to kind of split hairs a little bit. Cachaça is not rum technically because they have a little bit of a difference in terms of the demands that are made on the proof that the liquid comes off the still. And the government of Brazil did want to, highlight that difference as well as other things about the way they age their spirit in various type of woods. And so that's why they passed a law so that they can call it cachaça or Brazilian rum. That took place about 15 years ago. So with that being said, it's a bit of a free for all. You can make rum in over 90 countries. Sometimes producers will do a combination of fresh juice and syrup. Syrup is like kind of somewhere in between the fresh juice and the fully cooked down molasses. There are some producers that utilize sugar crystals. It just depends on the traditions of that region or that country. Again, this is a very loose definition of the category overall. Now,
Well, Shannon,
more specifically,
one quick question for you. In terms of like juice versus syrup versus crystals, yeah, some places it's basically the way that they do things, but are there any of those things that you listed that would be considered cheating to other people? Like skipping a step?
okay, there are some people out there in the rum world that would consider some of these things cheating. And again, this is why it's so contentious. Okay, so in Barbados, there's a gentleman named Richard Seal who
Never heard of him. Is he any good?
He's great. In fact,
Okay.
Brandon will probably tell you a little bit more about Mr. Seal's work in relation to Probitas. But Richard is very inspired by the old English laws regarding rum production, and there are some stipulations regarding the types of stills and aging methodologies that are not official laws of now, but Mr. Seal is adamant that these are the rules that should define the category. That's his take. If you look at another example where there's some, legal things in play, Jamaica is working on creating a GI, and that would also have some specific rules to the Jamaican approach to rum making, which is characterized by longer fermentation. Sometimes there's some wild yeast involved in there, pot distillation and high esterification. Esterification is like high aroma that comes with a combination of what essentially is like the oldest way of making rum, where you're not using industrial yeast, you're kind of letting nature take its course and you're monitoring it, but there's a little bit of variability from batch to batch, hence, the intensity of it. But what I found helpful when I was setting up the bar at Gladys, sifting through all these rums, was to organize the back bar in 3 main cultural styles that do have some things in common and would help my guests to understand where they might want to start based on what they like in spirits and drinks in general. So the English style rums that most people, I think, can relate to have a lot in common with whiskey. They are made on a combination of pot and column stills, as are whiskeys. Sometimes within that house, they'll be blending 2 types of heavy and light rums. They get aging in ex-bourbon cask, typically, and they can range from really dry and gravelly to round and mellow, depending on how much time they spend in the barrel or what kind of still. These generally don't have sugar added, hence something that might appeal to a whiskey drinker. Spanish style rums are a bit of a kind of latter development in rum production in that they focus more on using a column still. The column still is a method that came about in the early to mid 19th century, and the whole intention behind using a column was that you get more volume, it's more efficient, and it's also cleaner, so to speak. Like if you add more plates, then you get some of those natural substances stripped out in the process. So those kind of oily, heavy fats or those earthier elements are no longer there. And then you as a producer have more influence over the end product via how you age them in the barrels and how you blend them.
Well, let me ask you this. When you were doing your, as you said, when you were laying out these rums to figure out how you were going to display them at the bar, were you doing them by profile because you wanted to be able to explain it to people more easily, or also sort of to defy the light versus dark because it doesn't mean anything anyway?
I did it by cultural style, like what we're talking about right now. And within each cultural style, let's say in the Spanish style section, I would group it by island, and it would go from light to dark. But I'm glad you bring up this question of light versus dark, because light rum can be unaged or aged. And by unaged, I talk about is not spending time in a barrel. It can spend time resting in a neutral container, as is what you would see in the case of rum agricoles, the rum agricole blanc. They're white French rums. They're not aged because they don't change as a result of being in the container. They just soften and mellow. Aging refers to that process of the interaction between the wood and the liquid, similar to wine, right? So you put the liquid in a barrel and the wood exerts an influence on it. That's the aging process. So there are white rums that have been aged, but they've been subsequently filtered to remove the color. And this was the innovation of Spanish style rums, actually. Bacardi was the first producer in Cuba to introduce charcoal filtration, because what they wanted to do, on top of using a column still to make a drier, lighter spirit, was they wanted to have something that was clear, that would indicate to the consumer that the spirit was destined to go into a cocktail. Whereas up until that point, rum was not regarded as a cocktailing liquid. I mean, you saw examples of it here and there, but they were trying to compete with vodka and gin at a time when people were really wanting like lighter, crisper drinks. So you can have two rums that are white. One has spent time in a barrel and has been filtered. And the benefit of being in a barrel is softened by the barrel, but you want that light color to indicate how to use it in the drink. And the other one is a little wilder and funkier because it hasn't been tamed or influenced by the wood. And that's the case of, say, a cachaça or a French agricole.
You have, I think is it called like La Isla Piña? It's something, one of the cocktails in your book, where you're using I think it's the Diplomatico. It's our 5 or 6 year, and it's crystal clear. It's not like an Añejo Blanco. It's like crystal clear. So my assumption was always that they did a full filtration on that, but I think it's 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, so in the Spanish style, I'm glad you bring up the Diplomatico. I love that rum. It's just so creamy and mellow because it is 5 to 6 years old. And it's important to note that I love you bring up the age thing, because the age is another thing that's confusing to a lot of people where rum is concerned. In English styles, typically that age would refer to the youngest rum in the blend, if there's an age statement at all. In the Spanish style, that number can refer to the oldest rum, but it doesn't necessarily correlate to how much of that older rum is in there. So a rum can say 12. That could mean that 10% of it is 12 years old. It can mean that there are 12 different marks from the distillery. Marks mean, different expressions drawn off of their stills, or 12 different barrels. So this is why people find it confusing. And what I suggest to people in terms of understanding, what they want, is to just learn about how the different cultures regard their process, and that will give you some clues as to what to expect, regardless of the color or the number that you see on the bottle.
Right. So what's funny is, we're gonna go to a little bit of some Q&A time with you. One of the things I want to make sure that we hit is, we talk about this time and time again, both Shaker and Spoon in general and in the happy hours, but taste is subjective. So, somebody might post a cocktail in the group that they just love. It's, their favorite thing ever. And you might look at it and be like, that sounds really horrible. Because there are certain things that we just like and certain things that other people don't like. And everybody's right. That's the whole thing. Is like you really can't be wrong about what you like. I'm sure we can find some exceptions, but for considering the fact that most of the people in the group have now tried Malort, there are certain things that if you say I love them, you may actually be wrong. But yeah, exactly. Paul's showing it off right there. But the important thing, like Shannon said, is that you actually explore this. So there's a little chat in the chat right now about pot still versus column still. And that's a whole other discussion that we'll save for another time, because we'll just go way too deep on that. I think one of the interesting things to talk about here, considering the fact that we're focusing on lightly aged blended rums, is that we can go anything from, like this, the Denizen 3. It's, obviously clear and has been, filtered out a little bit. Goldman, are you still on here? I can't see. Oh, there we go. Can you turn on your camera and show off what you've got there? Yeah. So on Goldman's background, you can see some of the Plantation 3 stars, and it has a little bit of like a tinge to it. It's generally clear, but has a little bit of that yellow. But there's very little aged in that product. What's the breakdown again, Goldman?
So it's actually 4 different distillates from those 3 countries representing the 3 stars, which doesn't mean 3 years, which commonly gets kind of thrown around out there. But it's going to be unaged Barbados, which is the bulk of the liquid, combination of column and pot still. And then we have unaged Jamaican from Long Pond Distillery. And then we have a touch of some aged Jamaican, which is actually about 10 years old, give or take a little bit. That's going to change a little bit because it's an extremely volatile rum. And then we have a small amount of a 2-year-old Trinidad as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's not Jamaican. It's not Jamaican rum unless it smells like you've taken an old tire, stuffed it with weed, and set it on fire and rolled it down the hill. That's
the beauty of Jamaica, is that it's so unique, and then between all the different distilleries there, they're also unique within themselves. So it's really a special place too.
And that's one of the things that we're talking about mostly here, is not only the background of all of these rums and the different countries, like Shannon was talking about. The way that she's divided them is by style, by country style. But each of these products, when blended together, make for a very fun layer thing. Brandon's going to touch upon that as well. Sorry, Shannon, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that, the difference between column and pot distillation does play a role in the aged white rums that we're talking about tonight. And aged white rums from the Spanish side, not so much, because those tend to be heavily influenced by column. But I have to point out that in the case of a pot still rum, especially when you're talking about rums from Jamaica, which is what we're generally talking about in the type of bottles we're looking at today, those just give the body and the creaminess and the volume even before you have a barrel interact with it. And that's the aroma element that you get off of these blends as well. That's important to take note of coming from that pot still.
One of the questions we had for you was, one of the things that I really like about your book, one of the things Brandon and I talked about a month ago, was the Smuggler's Cove subcategories. Oh, and Goldman, you and I talked about that as well. That, there's a couple of things. If you go to, I think he calls it something else, but it's definitely covers light, covers blended, and both. When he published the book, I don't think Probitas existed at the time, but definitely the Denizen 3 and the Plantation 3 stars is on there, is on that list. But it's a perfect fit for Probitas, and we have so many overlaps between these 3 products. Again, randomly selected to sort of fit this subcategory, but there's, all 3 countries overlap, which is pretty amazing. And it just goes to show you how those layers work so well just in the straight rum before we even start talking about cocktails at all. One of the questions we had for you, sorry, was, Okay, we talked about white versus dark, denomination of origin and terroir, age, filtration. Any other questions for Shannon before we move to the next? She's not going anywhere, but in case anybody has any questions that are not Malort related. Okay, Paul wrote, a lot of times menus are based on geography. I'd love to hear how a well-stocked rum or tiki bar handles rum organization, if not by category.
Yeah, I mean, what I have typically seen, and that's a great question. I was looking at menus online last night for another project, and I don't know if you guys ever been to Chicago. Malort keeps coming up here, so I'm guessing some of you are familiar with Chicago. But I was looking at the Sparrows menu, and it's a Cuban bar, but they organize their rums by geography, and they've been doing that for the better part of a decade, because I think they recognize that, doing, light or gold or dark was just not going to really do people any good. And it's also based on a hotel theme. So I think this idea of traveling to different places is kind of like in the DNA of the story. Likewise, at Lost Lake, they also organize by geography, as those 3 dots and a dash. What I have found is that bars that have an overt rum theme or have an island or a tiki theme, they've already been through their paces, and they have realized that, the place in the geography is going to tell you more than saying light or gold or dark. So that's how I see it organized on those menus. Whereas if you go to, a more general bar program, they're probably going to say light or gold or dark, like if they have like 5 or 6 rums.
And I don't know if either of you have been, or if any of you have been to the Multnomah Whiskey Library. It's not just whiskey.
R.I.P. man.
Yeah, I know,
R.I.P.
right? Of all the, we'll get to that part too about the bars that we're gonna have to miss forever. But their menu, when he first put it together, that menu was insane. It really was. Oh, look, there's your book. Somebody's got your book. By the way, for those of you who are asking, I saw a couple people asking in the chat. It's actually going to be in the Make More store. Oh, sweet, Matt's got it too. It's going to be in the Make More store, and hopefully we'll cajole Shannon into signing some. So we'll have those for you guys to pick up very soon. We love supporting all bartenders, all authors, especially when they're both. It's always a nice thing to do. But at Multnomah Whiskey Library, he put together this insane list that had, ABV, where it came from, if it had anything specific about it, like age, or in the example with Ocha, of course, Brandon, they would also put the field designate in there as well.
Yeah, the year.
But what was really cool was, in addition to the long list after every name of the product, it was still categorized based on flavor profile. So you could look it up based on country or geographic indicator, or you could do it based on just, I'm looking at category, subcategory of whatever, tequila, mezcal, whiskey, rum, and you could find it based on, how they categorize it as well, and still learn all the information. Okay, so because everybody's thirsty, and I know we have some East Coasters that have been waiting to drink for a while, Brandon, would you mind diving in and making that cocktail for everybody?
So we just want to go straight to the drink?
Yeah, just straight to the drink.
Sweet.
You don't even have to talk that much. Really, people are just interested in the drinking and not really in what information you have.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's get to drinking then. So I'm calling the drink the Pink Pachyderm, for one, because, if we're playing with rum cocktails, why not at least have a little bit of fun with the name? But Donnie and I got to talking about cocktails that were utilizing both rum and absinthe. And he brought up this story about a cocktail called the White Elephant that was created in Brooklyn by a bartender that called for Bacardi, as well as like 2 bar spoons of Kubler absinthe. Anyway, so this sent me down a rabbit hole of experimenting with the drink. I'm also fairly obsessive about some of like Hemingway's daiquiris. And if you ever get into that history, you'll notice that there's like daiquiri number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. You often will see the Hemingway daiquiri on a cocktail list. based upon the number 3, which was kind of this combination of both grapefruit juice and lime juice. So you had like a lightly aged blended white rum, or arguably he was drinking probably Cuban rum at the time. And beyond that, I mean, you would have that like lightly blended aged white rum. You'd have grapefruit juice. You'd then have also lime juice, maraschino liqueur, you know, and then kind of shake it up, good go. But that was Hemingway Daiquiri number 3, which is kind of the one that you find everywhere. So that's kind of what I was playing with. So we're going to start with 2 ounces of Probitas. And again, this is a lightly aged blended white rum, 3 components in it, 2 unaged components from both Barbados and Jamaica. There's an unaged coffee column still, which is a very different type of column still. And we could break down column stills in intensity from like giant multi-columns that will yield neutral and flavorless to single columns like what are used in Agricole and Armagnac. And I know I'm getting super geeky for a second, but so be it. That are way more kind of intense. So there's basically unaged coffee column, unaged pot still also coming from Hamden Estate in Jamaica. And then we have 2-year aged rum coming from pot still rum coming from Foursquare in Barbados. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So 2 ounces of this, because I also like a stout cocktail. If this was being made for Hemingway, we might even go, you know, 3.5. And Shannon's got a great little bit in her book about the Florida Daiquiri, which arguably began at the La Floridita Club in Cuba and was primarily made for Hemingway and has the nickname the Papa Doble. So, you know, dig into that when you pick up the book that apparently Shannon's also going to sign some copies of. So that's dope. And Shannon,
I'm being pressed in the service right now.
I know.
I'm being pressed in the service.
I saw it in the chat. But next time,
the beauty is we also then get to buy a bunch of books from you. So it's you know, exactly. I feel like it's one of those things that like you can work out.
So, and Donnie, thanks for posting the recipe, because I was like, wait, what was my final build on this?
Yeah,
so 2 parts Probitas, half. John D. Taylor's Velvet Falernum, which is also made at the Foursquare Rum Distillery in Barbados. Falernum is kind of a classic tiki ingredient. It actually originates primarily, and there's a lot of debate about this right now, but it originates primarily from Barbados. Originally was rum, lime, and sugar, and just kind of as a way to help preserve your lime juice, and was drank, you know, highfalutin spots. And then again, half of lime juice and fresh ruby red grapefruit juice. I swear I used to make cocktails and talk years ago, but you know, these are desk tales. Like, I've now set up my office to become my home bar. I brought my bar mats out because I was like, I don't want to spill anything on the keyboard. And then I was sitting here playing around with it because I was like, I love this idea of absinthe, but the original White Elephant cocktail called for 2 bar spoons of absinthe, which I tried it and it just came off a little too intense. It just like didn't tame the right way. So I went with a single bar spoon with some splashes of Kubler Original. Those are just extras, you know, for me for later. And I shook it up. I tasted it with my wife because arguably she has a better palate than I do. We sat down to try it and she's like, it's not like it I can taste everything. It's all there, but it's just not like integrated. So what is it needing? And we looked up Ian Burrell, who's also known as the Global Rum Ambassador. It's self-defined. He called himself the Global Rum Ambassador and everybody just accepted it. And then it was good. And now he's known as the Global Rum Ambassador. So if you ever want to be, you know, an ambassador of Malort, right? Since that's a thing, maybe you can just start calling yourself the Global Malort Ambassador. And
I think we have one of those in the group already, but she will remain nameless right now.
Yeah. So there was this weird trick that I learned when I was still bartending, and it's, you know, like sometimes you'll throw absinthe into a cocktail and you get overwhelmed by like the fennel and the star anise, and you want to kind of find a way to tame it. And you would either pair it with something that is equally as strong as a flavor, which would be something like, you know, a really intensely peated Islay Scotch, or like a really intense mezcal to like combat it. So 2 big flavors fighting against each other. Or this really bizarre thing that if you throw another anise-based thing into it, it actually somehow like actually layers it a little bit better and integrates it. So I opted for Peychaud's bitters because Peychaud's has a little bit of kind of like the star anise, kind of subtle vanilla kind of thing going on. So 3 dashes of Peychaud's. I'm actually going to go 4 because I've got it in this wee baby dasher, which looks cool, but you know, the dash is not as big as I'd like. and then 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, because Ian Burrell came up with a cocktail called the Gale Seal Daiquiri, which is named for Richard Seal's wife, Gale, she's also the global ambassador of Foursquare. So like there's a little bit of kismet there. And that drink is basically this whole build, sans grapefruit, sans absinthe. So I thought, well, why not? We'll throw the Angostura and also tie it together. 2 dashes. And like any good cocktail that, has a bunch of fruit juice and whatnot, you got to throw some ice and shake it up really good hard. So I'm going to do that now. And if I was still, working behind a bar, I wouldn't do this with my hands, but I'm making this for myself today. I'm not wearing a mask and I am in the safety of my own office. So, here we go. Shaky, double strainy. I also probably would have chilled my coupe glass, but whatever. We're all friends. We're just having drinks together.
I like whenever they're shaking like that, the computer automatically mutes that person from like all the noise. Brandon, if you can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, there is a question here. She said, I'm sadly out of grapefruit juice. What would you do? Add more lime, lemon, or pineapple to sub?
I would go actually I would go up your lime just a little bit and do just a splash of pineapple.
Yeah, the pineapple is going to potentially, take over, but you will need a little bit of that sweetness. Having a lack of the ruby red is going to take the balance a little bit out of your drink.
Double strain. Cool. And originally I was garnishing this with a grapefruit twist, and I was running around right as we were getting set up, and come to find out that my grapefruits are gone. So I have the juice, but no peels left. So if you have a little peel, get a little twist, give a little spray.
And a lot of the subscribers, Brandon, actually hold on to some of the mini atomizers and the other things that come in the kit. So there's always usually like some left over from making the 4 drinks. Mm-hmm. And so if any of you have, any of the grapefruit spritz from a previous box, that's a great time to use that if you suddenly just want the aromatics but don't necessarily have the juice or an actual grapefruit around. So
yeah, now
those are great.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a sucker for like grapefruit plus absinthe. So like again, those kind of like star anise kind of characters together, like star anise, fennel, things like that with grapefruit. But if you have like orange, great, awesome. Any kind of citrus oil over top, I think is just nice for that like quick aromatic punch. By the way, for those of you who maybe are not as familiar with absinthe, no, you will not hallucinate from drinking absinthe. That is an old, basically wives' tale, but it has to do with the fact that wormwood, which is one of the primary ingredients of making absinthe, does contain a molecular compound called thujone. And thujone is a hallucinatory compound. However, not enough of the thujone survives distillation to actually make you hallucinate. The rumor is that you would have to drink so much absinthe that you would die from alcohol poisoning before you would start hallucinating. So I don't recommend trying that at home. But anyways.
They were pretty good at that during the Belle Epoque.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, oh, maybe we'll just drink this stuff till we pass out. First and foremost, cheers to everybody. I'm just having some plantation here just as a little sipper. Oh, I keep disappearing. As a little sipper. So cheers, everybody. Enjoy your beverages. Now,
cheers. This is really good. Awesome.
Oh, did you make it spot on?
Yes, we did. Spot on.
Awesome. I saw you squeeze in the grapefruit juice. I didn't want to interrupt you while you were going for it. But yeah, the for the most part, the recipe's very simple. It has a lot of ingredients. And Brandon mentioned me. He's like, oh, that's right. So you haven't worked at a bar. I forgot I shouldn't make 9-ingredient cocktails. I'm like, no, that's fine. But at least none of them are really hard to get your hands on. And later when we get to the trivia, someone will actually be winning that entire cocktail, all 20 ingredients that he put in it. So that's nice. By the way, back to the rum, Brandon, we nerded out a little bit on the cocktail itself, but I really want to, go back to what Shannon was saying before about not only how you choose a rum to taste and figure out what you like, but how we're choosing rums for cocktails. And in particular, again, this subcategory of lightly aged blended rums. Why is not just Probitas, but why is this category good for a cocktail like this?
Well, I think, like Shannon mentioned, the prevalence of white rum and just being exploding for cocktail use, right? Just you look at things like charcoal filtration used to filter out color, also used to like tame sulfur compounds, adjust for flavor. I mean, like this category exists for these lightly blended aged white rums because each of these different geographies brings such a different character of rum, right? When you're dealing with something that is so kind of phenolic and estery and, the banana and like Donnie said, the burning tire with weed rolling down the hill from Jamaica, but couple that with like the cleaner, more whiskey style of Barbados, you get all of these, the same idea of where I'm using absinthe and a star anise thing to kind of layer in anise, you layer in all these different characters and flavor of rums. And so, for example, when I was still bartending regularly, when we were building for some of the class, for some of our cocktails in the bar, we would often pull different bottles of, Jamaican and different bottles of Barbadian and different bottles of, the various rums and some Spanish styles. So, and that became like the house blend, right? So our daiquiri couldn't be repeated because it was this unique blend of rum that we came up with. And I think that's because each of these different characters, from the funkiness to the clean light character, just adds so much in flavor. And I think the key component that's really important to talk about is how much age does add depth to it. It adds, vanilla and caramel and butterscotch and toffee, but then you also get like really unique interactions. Like when you put something like a really funky Jamaican rum in an oak cask, right, you're going to start developing all of these other unique flavors because of the interaction with that spirit with the barrel. So I think that process of blending in a lightly aged rum is so important because you add so much more depth and character that then translates itself into the drink, right? So at the end of the day, you get a drink that's just that much more intense. There was a comment in the chat earlier. Someone had mentioned that rum fire is one of their secret ingredients, and that they always use like a 1/4 ounce of rum fire in every cocktail they make. Right now, if you're not familiar with rum fire, that's a specific mark that's made from Hamden Estate in Jamaica, and it is, I think it's like 69% ABV. It's been a while since I've actually seen a bottle, but it's A, high proof, and B, it is like all the way on the far end of the spectrum of intensity of flavor. So a little bit goes a very long way to adding some super intense character to a cocktail. So yeah, I mean, this category exists because there's a desire to take all of these unique flavors together and give you something in a single package that is, this is blended for that specific purpose.
So Shannon, question for you. Did you have a house white rum blend at your bar for any specific cocktail?
Would I tell you that?
I didn't ask you what the secret recipe was.
Yeah,
I was just wondering.
did. We did actually. Yeah, because as alluded to by Brandon's comment, and this is something you see not only in bars, but also within Probitas, within the Denizen that you showed us. One of the things I love about the rum category is that the rums play well together. In fact, the first examples of rums that were taken from the Caribbean for consumption off the island, in this case by the British Navy, exploited this idea that you could take different islands and put them together to come up with a unique flavor profile that was a signature. This is kind of like one of the first examples of branding in the spirit space expressed through rum.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's the long answer. We did have our own white rum blend.
Okay, so can you type into the chat the exact specifications and percentages that you used?
I don't remember, man. That was a while ago.
No, she's forgotten.
I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
But I will say, I can tell you what islands were in it. I can tell you that.
We are listening.
Okay, so it was predominantly pot still Jamaica rum because I kind of skew on the funky side. There was a little bit of Clarin, also funky. Clarin is Haitian rum made from fresh pressed cane juice. So it's not agricole, it's a little funkier. I kind of think of it as like the mezcal of rums, but that's another conversation. And there was also some Barbadian rum in there as well.
Interesting, okay. Hey, Goldman, you still here?
Thank you so much for introducing us to Clarin.
Oh my God, it's the best. It's everything.
Did you get
Love
that
it.
because of one of the recipes in the book?
We met her at Archipelago, and she told us what we were missing was Claret.
Oh, hey, y'all. Hi. How are you? I don't have like the whole like panorama screen thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not that good at Zoom, but
And we just
yeah.
got some of the aged stuff, so.
How y'all been?
Age Clarin.
The aged Claret, yeah.
That's awesome.
Sweet. Hey.
It's a really special. I mean, it's a really special product that can be used for so many different things. But it's definitely, as Shannon alluded to, kind of like the mezcal. So for people who, can struggle either with like the smoke or the high proof of mezcal, it's the same kind of thing. Like Claret is delicious, but definitely is a different flavor profile than someone who's approaching. Especially the category we're talking about today, which is lightly aged blended rums, things that are made to have layers, but also still be like well-rounded. Hey, Goldman, can you unmute for a sec? In your travels with Plantation, are there any drinks that stand out as being something that has worked particularly well with the blend that is 3 stars, where either specific ingredients or like a specific cocktail that just sings because of the various layering that was created with that product?
Yeah, some super simple answer. 2 daiquiris, one to drink immediately in one sip, and then one to sip on and enjoy. That's always my go-to. That's actually inspired by Paul McFadden, who's one of the inspirations of the 3 stars in particular, because we wanted a white rum, not a light rum. So a white rum that still hit all these different notes, from the nice balance from West Indies rum distillery in Barbados to that supercharged 10-year-old funky Jamaican rum from Long Pond, and then a little bit of that 2-year-old aged Trinidad in there. So it really layers all those different flavors together. It makes it kind of rich yet dry at the same time, which is a kind of difficult thing to do. And so quite simply, a daiquiri is the end all be all for white rums, and then it only gets better the more complex you play with it, I think.
So when you say 2 daiquiris, you're talking about 2 the exact same daiquiris. But the first one, you're like, I'm thirsty, crush. Number 2 is, I'm going to take some time and appreciate this one more.
Ever since I learned that, I don't think I've ever ordered one for myself. Correct.
We were talking about this today. Brandon, I don't know if you remember this from Tales, when ABV won bar fight.
Oh yeah.
And they had that oversized copita. I'm like, the days of 100 people drinking out of the same stone vessel to get those days are way gone.
They were streaming it at the bar there too. So we were there in New Orleans and they were streaming it live at ABV.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there's not. So, the thought of having a meal where you get to share things with people, and that includes rounds of cocktails. So you want to try everything, but you can't without potentially falling over. So, you and your friends get a few different things and everybody tries everybody's, cocktails, and then you share food or you do sort of family style. That's something that I'm really looking forward to coming back, because it's such a great way of expanding your palate. And again, the same thing with this discussion about these blended rums and categorization in general, is figuring out what it is that you like, because as you hone in on the things that you like, you figure out why, whether it's denomination of origin or style. And that way, when you see something made in a cocktail on the menu, it'll give you the impetus to go and order that thing or try something that you hadn't previously thought of. One thing that, while I have, everybody who has been, both, I think all 3 of you have done a lot of traveling for work, and that's something that has not happened a lot in this past year. And so one of the things that we try to do, constantly, as a company, that our ethos is very tied into hospitality and bartenders and making sure that everybody's work and creativity is celebrated. And that's been something that's been very difficult for operators this year. obviously, they've been relegated to, things that are takeaway. They haven't been able to really host, which is, what hospitality is really based upon, is having people in your space and sharing your all the work that, like, for example, that Shannon put into her menu and put into how she listed and how she chose these rums. Those things are appreciated when somebody steps into her space to taste through rums and talk to a bartender and try cocktails, or like Goldman mentioned, like, bumping into a friend and you just get a couple daiquiris, and by the time you finish those, then you get in, then you start diving into the menu cocktails, because you've had your discussions and tasted your things and made your way forward. But Brandon, as you've been cut down severely on your travel and you're based in Kansas City, what are some of the silver linings that you've seen in terms of what the industry has done there to make their way through the pandemic?
I mean, honestly, I think some of the biggest things have been the industry coming together, like just the community supporting itself. There's been a lot more of just openness about, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? Like, do you need it? Like, people offering for like, hey, if you need a gig. There's been a lot more of like the gig economy kind of stuff. Retailers have stepped up. Interesting, more retailers in the Kansas City market have started hiring former bartenders that are looking for work to help advance their in-store cocktail programs and suggestions, because they realize that a lot of bartenders just naturally want to geek out about these products and talk to anybody that they can. And similarly, they're hosting way more of these things. Lots of Zoom happy hours have been happening and inviting bartenders from the community. So I think that's been really cool. Obviously, there's been the bars that have pivoted immediately to doing cocktails to go, or inviting guest bartenders to come in and do like their featured cocktails to go. There was actually, since we're on the topic of tiki, there was a really, really awesome tiki bar here in Kansas City called Tiki Cat that unfortunately has not survived the pandemic. But one of their main bartenders is a young lady named Diana Condori, and her family's originally from Colombia, Bogota, not like Columbia, Missouri, but Columbia, the country.
By the way, only someone from Missouri.
I know, which sounds like it's totally a thing that somebody in Missouri would get, but maybe, anyways. She's started her own pop-up in this whole process called Condor's Cove. And she's been, taking over spaces that are, safe for pandemic, et cetera, and allowing outdoor dining and doing little like convert into a tiki pop-up for 2 nights. And she sells out now in 24 hours. And interestingly, I was talking with her the other day. Actually, Star and Pooch just said it was the last bar they drank at in the before times. That's amazing. So yeah, Tiki Cat, like, love that spot. My dad owned, these are actually some of my dad's menus, but he owned tiki bars back in the 1960s and 70s. So that's also like very personal world for me. But, it's like looking at, we were talking with her, or I was talking with her, and she brought up how there are people now reaching out to her because of the success she's having from the pop-ups that previously would not even give her the time of day, which is really upsetting on one hand, but then also lemons into lemonade on the other. So it's at least exciting to see that everyone's been very, creative, and there's still, I would say, the same level of passion and excitement about creating drinks, engaging with guests wherever they are. So I mean, that's rad, and it's just really cool to see. So at least Kansas City. So
I think the bartenders and the bars that have hung on for the duration of the pandemic, I think they are really looking forward to being open again and seeing people. And so I say, if you can like reach out in a personal way, that's, I think a lot of bartenders would be heartened by that.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to, we have a couple more things to hit before we're done. We have a little bit of time. When we end up with a little bit of time, I want to make sure that our guest today can sort of hit you guys with a couple of, just trying to pull some ideas out of you. So for example, at the end of a subscription box, we end up sometimes with extra syrups and extra tinctures, extra bitters. And so there are folks who are posting some very cool cocktails that they've come up with just based on these extra ingredients they have. So With that in mind, if there is anyone that has a leftover shaker and spoon ingredient that you would love to get an idea of a delicious, lightly aged, blended rum cocktail using one of those ingredients, then put your hand up or something and unmute yourself. And there we go. So Maya, you want to go?
The matcha syrup, the green tea syrup.
The matcha is kind of a rich, and I think it's titled rich matcha syrup. But what would you something that you would create based on a lightly aged blended rum with a matcha syrup?
Well, I have Cuban cocktails on the brain of late because of a project that I'm working on. And you showed a bottle of Denizen aged white in the beginning. And I used to work with that brand, and that formulation, which is a blend of 80% House of Angostura Trinidad column still rum. And the remainder is some Worthy Park Estate, which is a pot still Jamaica rum, and Hamden, which is a kind of funkier expression of pot still Jamaican rum, were designed with something like the mojito in mind. So you have some grassy vegetal notes in the blend that you get from the Jamaica rum, and then some kind of slight floral top note that I think is great in terms of harmonizing with the mint that you associate with that type of drink. And then when you think about the matcha and that kind of like green, kind of earthy element, you kind of see a little bit of a parallel in the Trinidad component of the blend, which is soft and creamy, but does have this kind of grassy, earthy kind of thing going on with it. I would do like a matcha mojito or like a matcha iced tea type of riff. But it'd probably be more like an iced limeade type of riff. That's where my mind instantly went.
I mean, that sounds crushable and delicious.
Brandon's like, I have no extra comments.
Yeah, I'm like that now.
Anybody else have an ingredient question that you want to try and get these guys to riff off of? Yeah, Star and Pooch.
Yeah, so I've got a bunch of the spritz of the grapefruit lavender citrus left. And I got to say, the lavender just overwhelms anything I do with it. Just a simple spritz over a coupe glass, and I'm like, I'm tasting mom's soap. So what can I do? Silence. Great. Thanks.
Oh, nobody wants to take this one. I will jump right in. What do you, okay. Any
Go for
takers? Boom, 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 boom. All right, cool. Okay, so with that lavender element, what you can do is basically disperse it. Okay, so rather than doing a spritz, put it in a dropper bottle and you will lengthen it. So it's very intense. I wouldn't use it on a single serving. I would say if you made like a bottle punch, so a very simple template, like think like a canchachada, which is basically like a honey and lemon cold toddy based on Cuban rum. It's a precursor to the daiquiri, right? So you can look it up at similar specs, scale it up to like a 750 bottle, and then take that tincture, put it in a dropper bottle, and you probably just need 2 or 3 drops max to influence the flavor in that entire bottle. I would treat it like you would, I'd say rose water that you were using in an orgeat, or maybe you could even take that and add it to a simple syrup or a honey syrup. That might be even better, right? So make a honey syrup, add a few drops to that, the way you would use rose water in making orgeat, and then include that in a range of cocktails, and maybe you don't even have to go so far to make a bottle. That's my gut.
I mean, that's the point of this, is just to sort of riff off of it.
Yep.
That's one of the things that actually I have in my fridge and use every so often. Like I have an atomizer of chartreuse, I have an atomizer of absinthe, and I have that grapefruit oil lavender, and it is very heavy lavender. But what I'll often do is actually lightly spray the base of the glass So
Okay.
it's truly is an aromatic and does not take over your palate, because I'm not sensitive to lavender. I'm not sensitive to cilantro. Like, it can have that very easy send off to the land of soap for sure. Or just cleanser, like sometimes you get something that has, ammonia in it, and it's like either a cat peed in here or a cat peed and then somebody tried to clean it, but being able to take something like that is on one hand delicate, on the other hand very overpowering. If it's like a coupe glass or even like a stemware like this, I'll do a very light spray from far away but low so that it does not get anywhere near the top of the glass. You can't avoid to smell it. Like with maraschino or with creme de violette, there's a lot, like with an aviation or with the last word, or honestly a Hemingway Daiquiri. I find some of those things very cloying, and I try not to overuse them. That's a good time where I will do like a drop or a very little bit of a drizzle into the drink. But with something like particularly like lavender, doing something that's just going to maybe even get on your hands. A lot of times you'll see people doing the citrus, and we've talked about it before, like the citrus rub where, the bartender rubs it all over the top. I think that's great stylistically, but for the most part, just getting the oil on the top and somewhere where the guest is going to touch it leaves the guest with, and I'm sorry for this comparison, but all I can think of is the Seinfeld episode where George keeps leaving things in this woman's apartment, so she has to call him back and he has to go and get it. So I call it the Costanza Method, where you literally you zest the lemon peel over the top because I want it in the aromatics, but I do it along the stem because then they're going to touch it and then they're going to scratch their face, or they're going to, and then later in the evening they're going to smell it somehow. It's going to be on something that they touch, and they're going to be like, "Oh, Shannon, that dreamy bartender I had," So it's kind
I've
of
used that technique before. It has worked. That's how I get my regulars.
yeah, exactly. You just keep coming. The thing is, you have to do drops of methadone to see how often they come back. I always find that's good.
I also love the El Presidente. I almost wrote that in the chat saying whatever the ingredient is. I'm glad I didn't say it because I probably wouldn't make that with the lavender. But I love the El Presidente because it's the only. I also thought Cuban for sure. So like a mojito for citrus, tall, refreshing, and then I can only drink so much citrus, when we used to go out on the road all the time. So I'd always get an El Presidente, which is you can experiment with all the different types of rums, orange curacao, little dry vermouth, and a little grenadine as well. And I like to add some orange bitters to it, but you can really experiment. You can go light, medium, full bodied, mix up the rums. It's super, super versatile, I think. And it's one of those underutilized ones. You can throw it over a rock, you can do it up. I really like that cocktail.
Yeah, and you can switch it up. Honestly, this category that we've been talking about is probably the most perfect thing for an El Presidente, because I think people sort of default with rum to sort of citrus or frothy or fizzy as opposed to stirred and clean. And El Presidente is one. I mean, Sarah mentioned it's something we chatted on Instagram about that once. It's one of my favorite cocktails for a reason, and there's so many variations on that theme, and it's a great way to showcase whether the Denizen 3 or the Plantation 3-star. Or the Probitas. I mean, you taste the thing that you used, and you can switch it up. You can go dry vermouth, sweet vermouth, Bianco vermouth. Like, highly recommended that you not do not do it with crappy grenadine. If you don't have like pomegranate syrup or at least a decent grenadine, if it's just flavored, colored red sugar, just leave it out. You'll be better off without it. You don't really need it. But it's such a great cocktail and so easy to play around with, and a great way to showcase any rum, much less these three that are already so layered in and of themselves. Any other ingredient questions? Okay. We are going to move. Oh, that's cute. There's two Pomeranians who want to ask questions, but okay. So we're gonna do the, I wanna leave anything open for any other Q&A. Paul had asked a question about one of the unique things about rum. We did talk about this before, about people doing blends of multiple rums in cocktails, why we don't see that as much in other categories.
You mind if I jump in on that one?
Please.
Yeah, so the thing about the rum category is that it comes from all over the world. So in a sense, yes, they're all the same type of spirit, but in practice and in experience, not necessarily, depending on the islands and the regions in question. Meanwhile, if you compare the rum category to other spirits categories, the other categories tend to be a little more narrow. I like to think of the rum category as kind of like wine, and I'm a little biased because I come from a wine background. So think of some blends like Col de Rome. It's like the easiest blend I think a lot of us know of. The three grapes that go into there are not terribly interesting all by themselves, but when you put them together, you have something iconic and something memorable. Because there's enough diversity within the rum category so that you can actually play off of the different features as well as that commonality. Whereas in my experience with agaves or with whiskeys, there's not enough diversity to really create like this layer or symphony flavor set you can get from.
Well, whatever, you're biased.
Yeah, I admit it.
Yes, I mean, you didn't write a book that was called Whiskey, 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 Drink My Whiskey. So, yeah, yeah. Pam, was that your cocktail valet that just popped into the frame? Yes. Okay, good. Yeah, make sure that she really gives. There we go. She brought you your drink. That's nice. Okay. Are there any other questions we have? We have to sort of wrap it up, and I want to dive and have time for the trivia. But are there any other questions for our wonderful guests? Okay, awesome. Then these guys wrote up some really good ones. The prizes on the happy hour this month are kind of idiotic. So the questions have to be a little bit harder because they're really great. So basically, we've got some questions from Brandon where he's going to.
Sorry.
No, this is good. This is good. Where you're going to get all 900 ingredients from his cocktail, as well as the probitas to make it. So that's nice. So we're going to have to do like we may even have to do a 3-parter on that one. And Shannon's is going to be a copy of her book that is autographed by her, and then going to also send a bottle of rum to go along with that. I have another really cool prize, which is kind of fun. We're going to send out the Diacachimba cocktail kit, but you're going to be able to try it with not 1, not 2, but all 3 of the Denizen rums. So we've got 3 pretty cool prizes this time, and one of Shannon's questions is so difficult that that one's going to be separate just for that. So the first one's going to be Brandon's, and Brandon, do you have them in front of you?
What, all of the things?
No, all of your questions in front of you. Because if not, I'll ask it. It's up to you.
You should ask it. I would encourage you to ask them.
All right. So Brandon's is going to be a 2-parter. And again, the way that we work this, for those who have not done this before, your answer has to be in the chat, and you have to be the first one to answer correctly. If it is a 2-parter, don't answer them separately. You have to answer both parts together in one chat and be first. Clear? Good? Everybody good? Okay, great. So, Brandon Cummins, there's question number 1 and question number 2. The first one is, which variation of the Hemingway Daiquiri inspired one of tonight's cocktails? And the second part is, what is the compound in wormwood thought to cause hallucinations? Again. Oh, wait. All right.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it looks like, yeah, exactly. It's no joke.
Everyone's all over.
Debbie, looks like Debbie nailed that one first. Kylene's super close, but just off. It is THUJONE. And again, if you drink enough of that to actually make you hallucinate, you will probably already break your renal system. So I wouldn't recommend. There's a bonus one that he did right, which was great. That charcoal filtration is used to A, remove color, B, remove sulfur compounds, or C, adjust taste. But which one is it? Boom, Karen, well done. Yes, it is in fact a trick question. It is D, all of the above. Great, awesome. Okay. All right. So the question from Shannon. This first one is going to be for a bottle of Plantation 3-Star, as well as a copy of her book, so that you can use the rum to go through and make some of the cocktails. You're going to need more than just a bottle of rum to make those cocktails, but it is highly recommended that you try at least a handful of them. So this one's going to be a two-parter as well. Part one is aged white rum spends time in a barrel yet has no color, and how is this achieved by the producer? Wait for it. Part two, what is the full name of the Cuban rum producer who invented charcoal filtration process and the aged white style rum? Full name. A go. That's parts 1 and 2 together. Full name, guys. Full name.
Full name.
The pause is probably for the Googling right now, which is always fun.
Ooh, they threw the Mr. in there. Mr.
No. Oh, wait, hold on. Star Pooch, nailed it. Got it. Okay. And by the way, no, Bacardi's first name is not Ron, but that is pretty awesome.
Mr. Facundo.
Yes, it is exactly. Mr. Zacapa. That was my favorite one. Like, have you met Ron Zacapa? I have. He's so nice. Really, really nice guy. So Debbie, if you could do a favor and please message the Shaker and Spoon, do like a private message to the Shaker and Spoon here in the chat, and give them the email address that you use for your Shaker and Spoon account so that we can connect with you. And then same here, Star and Pooch, please do the same. Message your Shaker and Spoon email. Okay, here is question number 3, also from Shannon, and this is going to be difficult, but we're going to, because it's such a crazy prize, that I'm going to need at least 3 out of the 4, and you have to spell them correctly. I want to know the name of the class of white rum that does not spend time aged in a barrel, and that's distilled from fresh cane juice. And I want to know at least 3 of the 4 French territories spelled correctly. Go.
You guys got this. Come on, y'all.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. Off to a good start. I need 3 out of the 4 of the territories where that particular style is from, and of course the name of that style. Karen, were you just toasting us, or are you?
So we made an El Presidente in honor of the night. So
awesome.
This is our El Presidente, which I found in the Imbibe magazine that comes in our boxes, which I love. We had a whole educational moment tonight from Imbibe.
Awesome. Okay. Oh, we're getting super close here.
Okay,
we're getting so close.
All right, y'all need to come back now. We're getting cold. We were hot. We're getting
Yeah. You're doing well. I can tell you right now that
There's a missing piece island that I think a
It
lot
is
of people
not
get to.
Haiti. It is not Guyana. So you guys can stop
There's
guessing that. It is not
so
Jamaica. It is not Trinidad.
The missing piece.
It is not Haiti.
But I can I give a clue?
No,
What did you say?
no. Because at this point, they're like we're so close on some of these things, and yeah, and it is not Clarin. No Grenada, no Trinidad, no Barbados, no Virgin Islands.
All
No
right,
DR.
you're guessing now. Okay, use your phones. Do some Google right now.
I mean, I love St. Martin, but also no. Nice. There we go. Yeah, as Shannon said, y'all were so hot, and then it trailed off, and we lost
We
you.
drifted off the sea. We drifted off. We got the anchor was up. We weren't paying attention. We're off course now.
Maya, I will tell you that you were very close. So if you want to tweak it up,
No,
you were the
that's as
closest
good as my
one.
Google skills go, and it's embarrassing. I'm a professor. I should be better.
No, you're a professor. You should already know everything and never have to Google anything.
Of my one thing.
Okay. There's so many people that are close, but I mean, at this point, I'm just gonna have to give it to Maya. She was the first one to get remotely close, and you're only missing one. So I'm gonna go. Let me scroll back up and see if I can find it. Okay, so rum agricole, and you even spelled it correctly because it is spelled the French way, which is RHUM, which Shannon did not say, which means your Google skills are intact still. You're doing great. And Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Réunion. So it's not the correct spelling, but you were the closest by far. We're good.
Okay,
Everybody-
I said a comment. This is the hardest question, but I gotta say, I turned in my first two questions and then I got this response. I need a harder one, and I was like, all right. As you wish.
Okay, awesome. So, yeah, Maya, do me a favor again. Message the Shaker and Spoon account directly with the email address that you use for your Shaker and Spoon account, and we will track you down. Y'all, thank you. We went a little bit over time today, but this was really awesome. I want to thank our guests so much, both to Shannon and to Brandon. Thank you for taking your time out and sharing with us your wealth of knowledge, your very rusty bartending skills. I won't say who I'm talking about, and it's been a pleasure. And for those of you who still have questions for them, again, I'll actually post everyone's IG again here at the end so that you can get them. 1 second. To everyone, and there we go. So if you have any questions, you can always message them and have a chat. But thank you guys again so much for your time, and always great to see everybody. The Shaker and Spoon family is the best family. Don't tell my mom that I said that. And everybody have a great evening. Cheers to everybody. I'm gonna actually go a little bit of this one. Goldman, you should appreciate that. A little bit of a splash. And wish you guys a wonderful rest of your week and a great weekend. And until next time, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Bling. Oh, wait, we have one more question. One more question for Brandon and Shannon while I have you.
Oh, no.
Someone asked for a falernum sub. What would you recommend?
I mean, Brandon, you do work with Foursquare, so if you could just like break down what falernum is and why, I don't think there's a substitution, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I mean, so traditionally, historically, falernum comes from Barbados and is nothing more than rum, lime, and sugar, and was a way to help preserve the limes, right? But there's been spices and things thrown into them since then. Actually, a lot of folks talk about homemade falernums now. which are more spiced than, like, for example, John D. Taylor's, what you would find on the market. But technically based upon what falernum originally was, and if you look at the history of tiki and what would have been used in like Don Beach, the Beachcombers recipes, it was nothing more than like the Barbadian style of falernum, which was just a very simple sweetened lime cordial with a bit of rum to it. So if I was to like try and create a substitute, I mean, like, first and foremost, John D. Taylor's Velvet Falernum, which I do not represent in any way, shape, or form, to be completely clear about this. We don't own it. Like, I have zero relation with this product. Like, this is, in my opinion, the falernum that's on the market. If I was to try and create some kind of at-home additive or a substitute for it, a really heavy simple syrup, a splash of rum, and then some Angostura bitters together, and just shake that up, and kind of that might work. But falernum is such a unique flavor; it's really hard to do anything other than the real thing. But that's my 2 cents.
I mean, I'll just piggyback on that. I mean, if following those same principles, pimento or allspice dram.
Yeah, that's actually
it's also in the same rubric of the idea of using a rum base and then adding some citrus and spices. The Hamilton pimento dram or allspice dram, I think, kind of follows the same method as falernum, except it's a Jamaica rum base. So again, I just respect the history of falernum, so I wouldn't try to say that you can substitute it per se, but you can take the same principle and apply it to other products like that.
We had for our first ever Rums of Origin box, and that was, for those of you who are familiar with it, it's just like we normally have for our subscription boxes. There are 3 recipes in it from 3 bartenders around the world. This particular one was each of the bartenders was born somewhere else and are now in the US, and so they chose a rum from their country of origin, and that was part of the whole concept of the box, was really to talk about but again, it was really difficult. I mean, it was really difficult to find 3 rums from 3 different countries that weren't so far off that it would throw the cocktails in crazy different directions. So for example, we couldn't just do Barbados, Venezuela, and Jamaica. That's not going to happen. So we literally, our Rums of Origin 2 was just Jamaica. So 3 different Jamaican rums. And just that alone had, some crazy variables. But the first Rums of Origin, Paul Yellen in Charleston, actually, he was really not really understanding the whole concept of, like, there can't be any other booze other than the base spirit. Like, we can't put booze in the box. And so we actually came up with a non-alcoholic falernum. And obviously, like, it doesn't have that, that oomph. It doesn't have the body that you are accustomed to in falernum, but it worked really well with that drink. And I might get in trouble for saying this, but I really hope that at one point or another we bring it back and it goes into the Make More store, because it was so stupid good and it can get used for a lot of things. So, yeah, and the Lost Lake falernum is pretty awesome.
I'll try whatever tastes good.
Yeah. So that was our bonus question. So the other thing was Deb had asked for suggestions using bumbu, or thoughts on how to use an underproof overly sweet rum, which basically that covers that. Do either of you have a suggestion of something? I mean, that's a great way to describe it. It is a very sweet, at 40% ABV, aged rum.
Yeah, I mean, when you start to go into that category, you're basically going into liqueur category. And so it depends on what your goal is. Like, if your goal is to stay light on alcohol, that maybe that means that you want a more citrus forward drink, or you want a longer drink, you're probably going to be using some soda or lengtheners. We could be talking about Coca-Cola, or grapefruit soda or things along those lines. I just, you know, want to kind of understand like what you're trying to do here. It's like, I want to keep the alcohol light, or I just want to have like something that's like less intense by going lower alcohol. I do want to just put out there that a higher proof does not necessarily mean that it's going to be more harsh. And a lower proof doesn't mean it's going to be softer per se. In fact, in some styles of rum, a higher proof just means like more intensity of flavor, or it means more body. And so I wouldn't be put off by a higher proof, you know, because it might be giving you, you might just use less of it and just have a taste of your drink.
Yeah, the lengthening is a great idea. I mean, and that's an easy thing. If something's like overly sweet, you know, doing something that is soda and lime is a great way. Just like with the El Presidente being like a, you know, a stirred cocktail that really focuses on that particular spirit or the rum that you've chosen. Doing something as simple as, I mean, there's a reason why daiquiris and margaritas and caipirinhas and you know, those style of like 3 ingredient citrus sours work so well, and it's because of the fact that it's a great way to sort of showcase everything, and the citrus and the sweet balance each other out. But if your rum component or your base component is like overly rich, it's going to be a crazily sweet drink, as opposed to like soda lime twist. I've only had bamboo once, but yeah, I do remember it being very sweet. But like, you can easily balance that out. You can easily balance it out with a squeeze of fresh citrus in particular, or if you have like a well-made lime seltzer, that's a great way to taste the rum and not be overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, it'd be great with ginger beer. You can make, there's basically a spicy grog with that.
Yeah, especially the one, I mean, and again, if you choose one that has, you know, a lower number of grams per liter, grams per serving of sugar, that's always good. Because if you do like a Bundaberg with a bamboo, that's going to be crazy sweet.
No, that's why I say ginger beer as opposed to ginger ale. I mean, again, like when I think of like traditional ginger beer, it's snappy and it's crisp. That's just me.
Yeah, the San Pellegrino, Paul, you're right. I forgot how good those were. The San Pellegrino, I just had there's a Morello cherry and pomegranate. That was pretty excellent. And then there's a tangerine and something. It's unbelievable. And the Italians really nailed the bubbles. I don't know how they do that, but that product is really amazing. Really amazing.
Italians do it better. I'm biased. I used to work for an Italian restaurant group, and according to them, they do everything better. And I'm willing to believe it.
Yeah, I mean, except for hold on to an empire, but whatever.
They did okay for a minute. That was a big endeavor.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, now we're really actually signing off. This is like a little bonus. This is going to be in the outtakes later. But guys, again, thank you very much. It was so great to have you, and thank you for all of you for joining. And again, we're gonna toast out another cheers.
All right.
And I look forward to seeing you guys all in person with faces.
In real time.
Exactly. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.